I started the Real Mental podcast because it bugs me when film and TV miss the mark about how mental health gets portrayed. Real Mental is a podcast where a film-loving psychiatrist, that's me, talks to directors, writers, actors, and critics to help people figure out their life by getting to the truth about mental health in the movies. Welcome, Christy Lemire, to the Real Mental podcast again.
So good to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, it's always wonderful talking to you. And it's going to be fun talking about Materialists because I looked at your review and I think we might have some differing opinions about it. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation.
Oh, good. It's always more fun when we don't agree.
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me of Siskel and Ebert, right? The thumbs up and the thumbs down, right?
It's always the goal of what we do on our channel to try to have the most organic conversation. And we agree a lot, but we don't agree a lot. And people seem to like the ones where we don't agree more. So
well, it gives them food for thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell me your impression of Materialists and how you felt about the film?
Do you want me to do a quick little synopsis for you?
Absolutely.
Just in case our folks don't know what it's about. So this is Celine Song's follow-up to Past Lives, very acclaimed, gorgeous film about longing and what ifs. And I think we all kind of think about that, a love triangle. That is what Materialist is as well. It takes place in a very glittery New York where Dakota Johnson is a matchmaker to the elite of New York society, the creme de la creme. She curates who she works with and is very proud of the fact that her matches have resulted in 9 marriages so far. And she looks at romance and love as math and just like lining up columns of what people are looking for from each other, and is kind of cold and clinical about it. But then she meets Pedro Pascal, who is the brother of the groom at one of the weddings that she has arranged. And he's a unicorn in her estimation. He's gorgeous. He's wealthy. He's the right height. He's single. Like he's got all the check marks on your wish list. And so he kind of sweeps her off her feet into this whirlwind romance. But at the same time, her ex-boyfriend, played by Chris Evans, comes back into her life. He happens to be the cater waiter at this same wedding where she meets Pedro Pascal. And there's an immediate spark. Like everything changes. Like whatever nice pleasantries, whatever flirty banter is going on with Pedro Pascal, it all shifts dramatically, like imperceptibly, but like you can feel it. When Chris Evans shows up, like the hug is a little deeper, the eyesight is like a little longer, and he's her ex. And we learned that they had kind of a deep but tumultuous thing, and he's still the starving, struggling actor that he always was. And so it's how she navigates the situation in New York between this new guy who seems perfect on paper and the old love who truly deeply knows her. And what I love about Materialist is that it looks like glittery, escapist, rom-com, the kind of thing that Kate Hudson would have starred in the early 2000s, that they would play on the monitors at Dry Bar when you're getting a blowout. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Failure to Launch, any Nancy Meyers movie. It looks like it's got all the trappings of that kind of lovely, fun escape. Like Pedro Pascal's apartment is incredible and the clothes are great. Everyone's beautiful. But there's a sorrow, like a melancholy, an undercurrent of introspection and regret. And there's just more on its mind. As a film, I feel like it's examining this kind of film, the trappings of this kind of escapist film, and trying to look deeper into what's really happening here. So I was kind of dazzled by it. Everyone's good at it. Chris Evans has never been better. I think we think of him a lot as Captain America, but when he takes a chance, when he works with filmmakers who will let him play with the darker side of his beauty, like he was in Snowpiercer, for example. And I think things like that really challenge what we think about. It looks Knives Out, the first Rian Johnson Knives Out. Like he's sort of a jerk in that. He's not a jerk here, but there's an edge to him. There's like an anger, almost like a chip on his shoulder. So everyone's great, and I loved it. And it sounds like you didn't like it.
Well, you know what? I wanted to like it because I adored Past Lives. Like it was my favorite movie for the last several years, I think.
So beautiful.
It just did everything for me. Just, the scene of her on the boat looking out of the water, just like that was everything. And that's just, there's no dialogue, nothing is happening, supposedly, but, the feelings are so present. So I love that movie. So I really wanted to love Materialist, but I found that psychologically, it missed the mark in a couple of places, which I found problematic. So I'll tell you where I felt like it missed the mark in a couple of places, and you can rebut if you want.
Sure.
So there were two parts, and I don't want to give away too much, but let's say she had a problem to resolve about who she was going to choose. And I felt that at the very end, when she finally resolved her problem, it didn't feel like there was enough psychological development in her to take her from where she was to where she went to. It just kind of went, okay, like, I'm going to do that. That's fine. Like, there was not something that happened to kind of take her over the edge. If they had inserted even like a 30-second scene, a 1-minute scene, just of something clicking in her brain as to why she could go from where she was, which she had been stuck in for the longest time, to where she went to, which seemed very sudden and didn't really make sense, I would have liked it better. Because right now it felt to me like, why did she so easily go there now? And why couldn't she up until then?
The road trip does that. The time she spends with him when they go on the little road trip and they go to the other wedding. I feel like that moment under the twinkly white lights, I think like that does it. That sealed it, I think, for her. Don't you think? Without ruining things. I mean, I think that was transformative for her.
Put it this way, maybe she didn't underscore it enough. The director didn't underscore it enough to make it clear that that's why the character came to that decision.
Okay.
So that was one problem for me. I didn't feel I got enough good reason for the person who had this like very, very fixed opinion to change her opinion. And even the scene in which she does it, it's like, okay, I'll do it, or okay, yes, or okay, no, or whatever. When she makes her decision, it seems kind of like very sudden and arbitrary. Like for it to be such a painful, angst evoking, tormented, agonizing situation for them to have been in for so long. And then for her to just go, okay, I felt like it needed a little bit more something there for us to feel like, okay, this is why she's changing her mind. So, because it was such a big thing. The other piece that I had a problem with, and I'll give you credit for, the road trip and everything, but I just felt like I needed something more like really focused and specific. The other piece that I had an issue with is that there's a client that has something really horrible happen to them.
Yep.
And this client, the horrible thing that happened, we're not going to talk about because we don't want to spoil the movie, but after the horrible thing, they're sort of back on their feet and everything is carrying on. And yes, they go through a few bad moments, but then they're like, back on their horse, and I'm like, would you really be back on the horse after that particular horrible experience that quickly? It just felt like, again, there wasn't enough sort of psychological explanation. And I know it was a side plot and it wasn't the main characters, but it was such a huge event, and it's such a traumatic event for this person to make that particular decision. Again, it just didn't feel psychologically realistic. So because of those two pieces that didn't feel psychologically realistic, I had a problem connecting, because whenever, as a psychiatrist, whenever something doesn't feel psychologically accurate in terms of how human beings would in fact behave and respond, I get taken out of the action and I go, that's not real. So that's where I had some difficulties, but I agree in the sense of what you said in terms of like, it was introspective, it was dark, and the characters were able to show sides of themselves. Well, at least Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans were able to show sides of themselves that maybe they don't get to show a lot in Hollywood films.
Yeah. And Pedro Pascal too, in one scene in particular, there's a vulnerability to him that I don't know that we always see when you look at him on The Last of Us or any of the 18 movies he was in this year. It's the year of Pedro Pascal. People are like, oh, I'm so sick of Pedro Pascal. Like, how do you make all these movies? Sometimes you line up movies over the course of several years and they all come out at the same time. Like there was a year where Jessica Chastain was in 6 different things. So people are sick of Pedro Pascal. But if you look at him in like Eddington or Fantastic Four, I mean, I think he's probably best known for like The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. But there is a stoic kind of confidence, like a rebelliousness, a capability to him. And so the fact that at least in that one particular scene,
I know which one you're talking about.
he reveals a softer
Yeah.
side. And I
Yeah.
thought that was nice.
Yeah. And now let's pause for a quick word about my other podcast. I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. We all need to be inspired and uplifted these days. We need a good laugh and we need to be moved. In the Ruthless Compassion podcast, I speak with a wonderfully diverse group of people. They've overcome daunting obstacles and they're making unique, exciting contributions to our communities and to our world. The Ruthless Compassion podcast has created more than 175 episodes over the past several years. Why not have a listen to it today? I love a love triangle. It's always fun, because there's big stakes and lots of tension.
Mm-hmm.
And I love a love triangle where people are actually thinking about what's important. But I just wish that there was a little bit more finessing, the decision making. I'll tell you what I liked about it. The other thing I felt was that the way that they, you talked about math, the way that Dakota Johnson's character figured people's value I thought was very fascinating and very dark.
Mm-hmm.
That was very dark. How
Mm-hmm.
how people had value based on their looks, on their wealth, on who they grew up with, their family of origin and, how successful their family of origin was, where they live, what their job is. And all those things, I felt that was very, very, very interesting because it was horribly cynical, but I think very accurate in some areas of how people commodify each other and make each other into a brand or into, a thing that has a series of check marks or X marks. And that was, I thought, very fascinating to have that in a rom-com or romish comish.
Yeah, and also goes to show how little things have changed. I don't know if you're watching The Gilded Age on
Yes.
HBO. I
Yes,
think
I
in
love that.
Canada, it's Crave in
Yeah.
Canada, but it's tackling all the same stuff about like who's appropriate to marry and who comes from what family. And, should Gladys marry the Duke because it will catapult her to, society's greatness, or should she marry the guy she actually loves? So I think, that was 1890 the season takes place. And so things haven't really changed all that much in the last, 130 years or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's true. And the guy who liked her, who really, really liked her, but
Mm-hmm.
dumped her because he found a better match in terms of her position in society. And even
Mm-hmm.
though he had stronger feelings for her, he abandoned her for his ambitions. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was very, very interesting in the Gilded Age. So
Yeah.
yes, it's very much similar. And yeah, nothing has really changed, obviously. But I mean, they talk about it in the Gilded Age as something about the past. In this movie, Materialists, they're talking about it as something very much of today, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a lot of movies that do that. So I appreciated that about this film, how they,
Yeah.
they really focused on the soullessness in some sense of dating.
Right. It's just the things that are valuable are different, right? It's not so much like
Yeah.
what your family name is, but as far as like, if you're a tech bro, what kind of car you drive, what kind of watch do you have, how tall are you? You think people weren't tall in the Gilded Age. But yeah, but it just shows how little we've actually evolved as human beings. in this New York setting, at least in this very like, elite creme de la creme New York setting. I think that visually Celine's song establishes this place very effectively as far as like, the apartment and the parties and the lighting is perfect. It's all very romantic and it looks like a lovely place that you'd want to spend a lot of time in until you actually listen to what people are saying to each other. There's the scene in the early wedding, the wedding that everyone meets at. She talks to the bride and the bride's feeling a little unsure. And finally, Dakota Johnson's character talks her into walking down the aisle because she gets her to realize, oh, I'm valuable. He makes me feel valuable. And he is a better husband than my sisters. So that's also very cynical.
And actually, the actress who plays that, isn't that Louisa Jacobson, the
It
same
is.
person
It
in the
is
Gilded Age?
actually.
So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
we're
She's
tying it all
Marion
together.
Brooks. Miss
Yeah.
Brooks on the Gilded Age. Yes, you were right. So funny.
Yeah. No, it's the idea of value, I think, is very,
Mm-hmm.
very, very interesting. And I think they got that right. How
Mm-hmm.
people are valued in a certain type of society, the kinds of things that make us valuable, whether on a dating profile or whether with a matchmaker, the
Mm-hmm.
things that matter, right? And they're not talking about things that to me matter. Like, is this person kind? you know, Are they fun to be with? Are they loyal?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But going back to one of the points that you made about the very traumatic incident that
Yes,
occurs
yes.
to one of the characters, maybe this explains why she is so willing to get back on the dating scene again, because she wants to feel valuable as a human being and because she doesn't want to be alone. And maybe at some point down the road, she will actually process the trauma that she endured. But for now, all she knows is that she's in her late 30s and she's single.
Yeah.
So maybe that explains what might seem implausible.
Yeah, but that would have been nice again, like if we had a little, 30-second scene of her
Yeah.
saying that, to Dakota Johnson's character, and then we'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I
Mm-hmm.
think some things were implied, which maybe needed to be, made more clear,
Mm-hmm.
for those of us who are going like, why are they doing this?
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with you. I thought that Chris Evans really played a kind of slightly angry, frustrated young person who's
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it in a really difficult area and sort of feeling very stuck. Like he got stuck, right? And I think that's very plausible that that can happen. You get depressed and then you don't improve your situation because the depression makes you too sort of inert, right?
I would think from an identity perspective as well, you spend much of your life chasing a dream. And then
Yes.
who are you without that? And who else do you become? And then that's a scary process too. So it's maybe perhaps more comforting to do what you know and fail than try something new that is hard and perhaps a better fit. So yeah, he's
Yeah.
like mid late 30s and he's
Yeah.
still a cater waiter because he thinks he's going to be an actor. And the scene where we see him act is pretty funny. It's always funny watching actors who can act badly. Or singers who are good singers sing badly. That's
Yeah.
a skill in itself to like suppress your innate talent.
Yeah. And it's very hard to act well in that kind of a play.
Yeah, it
It
looked
was
terrible. It looked
terrible.
bad.
It was really a well done, badly written, badly acted play.
Yes.
That was fun.
Yes.
That was fun for
Mhm.
anyone who's into that kind of a thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, does it make sense to you? Like my objections, do they kind of make sense
Oh
to
yeah.
you?
But I think with some of it, like, there's only so much time. This is not a
Yes.
mini series. And so
Yes.
we have to perhaps gloss over some things
Yeah.
efficiently in the name of like moving the narrative along. And so, I see what you're saying about the one character in particular who had the traumatic incident, but like it still has to be like an entertaining, transporting film. And despite the more serious undercurrents here, it still has to entertain. And it's still gorgeous people falling in love with each other in New York City. So it has to operate on both those levels at once. And so maybe that's why she didn't want to get bogged down in things that might have made sense. So,
And probably not that many people are as stickler like I am for psychological realism.
yeah. Yeah.
Given how, everyone's on social media and there's very little of that around anyway. So,
Yeah. Do you think she picked the right person without giving it away? Did she make the right choice?
you know what? I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I do.
You
But
do, eh?
yeah, I do. Yeah, that's who I would have chosen. And it shows growth on her part, right? She
Hopefully.
evolves.
Yes. Hopefully, if the issues between them don't recur and,
Mhm.
and because sometimes we think, sometimes something is a deal breaker and sometimes it's a nuisance. If it's a
Mhm.
nuisance, you can live with it. But if it's a deal breaker and you're trying to force yourself to accept something that's a deal breaker, obviously it's not going to work. Right.
Mhm.
So if it's not a deal breaker to her, then I think she made the right choice. But if it is, then, it's going to come up again and then they're going to end up resenting each other and it's going to be sad.
Yeah. I thought there was a beautiful book ending in this movie. The images we see in the beginning, which at first when you walk in, you might think like, am I in the right theater? But there's a beautiful kind of visual symbolism that comes back at the very, very end. And in terms of like the framing of it, like where the first and last shots take place. And that kind of speaks to what we were saying about how nothing really changes, the desire for companionship and who we value as a good partner and all that. The thing that she gets as a symbol of love, in that setting, I just thought that was a lovely touch when I realized, like, oh, this is the exact same thing. I thought that was a nice touch. That's all I will
Well,
say.
look, Celine Song is very smart and
Mhm,
she's very talented.
mhm.
And, her movie Past Lives, that was an indie film, right?
It was, but it was nominated for Oscars. It
For
was
sure.
nominated for, I think, at least for screenplay. I'm going to look it up while I'm
Yes.
talking to you.
Yes. And yeah, for writing for sure. Because I just wonder how much of the Hollywood influence, might have detracted from her ability to tell the kind of story that she's so good at telling.
I see.
You know what I mean? And if this had been an independent film, obviously it wouldn't be so beautiful and the high budget and the gorgeous actors, but I
Yeah,
wonder what this film would have looked like if it was an independent film.
yeah, this is nominated for Best Picture and Best Screenplay.
Wow.
Yeah, because it is sort of similar to Past Lives in that it is a love triangle and it's an old love and a new love, and who is she going to pick? But you
Yes.
have like the A-list stars in it, and
Yeah.
so does that mean that she has to soften those instincts? Yeah, it's a good question. You think you make a movie that is that successful out of the gate that you can, do whatever you want, but maybe there are lots of voices.
Yeah, maybe you can do less of what you want because of all the noise, right? All the
Hmm.
expectations. And if there's a
Yeah.
lot of money thrown at you, then there's also compromises that you have to make.
Yeah. And do you know who she's married to?
No.
Justin Kuritzky's, who wrote Challengers, which is also about a love triangle.
Yes.
It's Zendaya and Josh O'Connor
Yes.
and Mike Feist, and
Yeah.
they are tennis players. So they keep telling the story, these love triangle stories, the two of them.
You wonder.
What are they trying to tell us? It's a theme they like to explore, and they're both excellent writers. So,
Yeah. Well, it's good that they're both excellent writers because,
mhm.
what kind of pressure would it put on a relationship? It's like the Star is Born. If one of them is super successful and good at their job and the other is, wah, wah.
they're
so,
they're both doing pretty great. Yeah.
so they're doing well enough. It's not an issue. Well, this has been really fun talking with you about materialists.
Yeah.
And I always like to have a little bit of friction when it comes up. Obviously, we don't make it up, just for the sake of it, but it's fun to sort of have slightly different ideas about some of the different things. But I think, yeah, there are definite merits to the film. And I would recommend that people see it and just, form their own opinion and also see Past Lives and then compare them. I think that would be really
Totally.
fun to do because, like you said, they're both about love triangles, but, one's an indie film with no A-list actors and the other is very Hollywood. So
Yeah, Greta Lee got better known, I think, after that. She was also on the morning show, but I think at that point, Greta Lee was not a huge star. I mean, not like Dakota Johnson level star. So, yeah, it was good. Yeah, let's do it again. This is always fun talking to you.
absolutely, for sure.
This is Dr. Marcia Sirota. Thanks for listening to the Real Mental Podcast. Please leave a review and your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter at marciasirotamd.com. And while you're at it, why not check out my Ruthless Compassion podcast with over 180 episodes and counting. If you have any ideas for guests for either Real Mental or Ruthless Compassion podcasts, please email us at info@marciasirotamd.com. Happy listening.